This video shows how to run the ConnextCMS Docker image or Docker file that was created. Docker is a newish type of virtualization technology that allows developers to create consistent environments. And so the idea is if you can get your development environment to run inside of a Docker engine, then it should be hardware and OS agnostic. So it doesn't matter if you're running on Mac or Windows or Linux. It doesn't matter what kind of hardware you're running. If the device and the OS runs Docker, your Docker file should be able to compile and be run. So this is really handy for people who want to check out ConnextCMS and aren't necessarily sold on the DigitalOcean droplet. So in this video, I'm going to show you not just how to compile the Docker image for ConnextCMS, which gives you both Keystone.js and ConnextCMS. I'm also going to show you how to set up a Windows development environment using VirtualBox. So VirtualBox is a virtualization platform created by Oracle, and it's commonly used for front-end developers and back-end developers who want to run in a mostly Linux environment but need to use Windows for everything else. So that's what I'm going to show you in this video how to do. All the steps I'm going to do will also be the same if you're using a DigitalOcean droplet. In both cases, we're going to use Ubuntu 16.04 and pretty common, and it runs all the software that we need to run. So this video is just an opportunity for you to look over my shoulder and watch me build a development environment in real time. I'll speed up the video a little bit when the downloads happen so that you don't have to just sit there and watch that. And I'm going to go a little fast because this is a video and you can pause it and rewatch it. So here's just the rough steps that we're going to go over. So first I'm going to boot up VirtualBox. Now I've already got VirtualBox running with Ubuntu 16.04 already, and it's a little bit outside the scope of this video on how to set it up. There's lots of YouTube videos and Google Docs out there, or websites that you can find in Google to walk you through the process of setting up VirtualBox. But this is the main application of VirtualBox, and what I did is I reverted my snapshot back to my base, which is a brand new, freshly installed Linux. And that's where we're starting from. So if you get VirtualBox installed on your computer, get Ubuntu 16.04 loaded into it and installed, take a base snapshot just like you see here, and you'll be starting from where I'm starting right now. So first of all, I'm going to do everything on the command line for the most part, because that's just how I roll. And so I'm going to open up a terminal there, and I'm also going to open up Chromium, which is the open source version of Google Chrome that runs on Linux, and go to the GitHub repository for the Docker file for ConnextCMS. I have to sign in because, like I said, this is a brand new installation. The computer doesn't know who I am. So like all the other repositories, you can find them in the Skagit Publishing repository. So here's the Docker ConnextCMS repository, and the README contains all the step-by-step instructions that I'm going to follow in this video and that you need to get it running on your own system. So I'm going to start by cloning this repository. And I'm actually just going to create a temporary directory, so I'm not doing it in my home directory. There we go. Now, nice empty directory. That's where I'm going to clone this repository. Oh. Oh yeah. Okay, so I've been seeing this and I don't know why it does that, but the trick is just to reboot the system. There's probably a better way to do it, but yeah, I've seen that happen once before and this solved the problem, so I'm just going to do that. And this is the advantage of running it, a virtual server on top of a nice computer like this, is it runs pretty fast. It's pretty snappy. And I'm still running on top of Windows, so I have everything I need in Windows, and I can get to this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my temp drive. I'm going to try and... Oh. And when I need to do this, it's not a big deal because normally it just lets me reload, but I can also go to history and go to my recently closed. Okay, so now we're back where we started. So, clone in the repository. Oh yeah, git. So I'm just going to update. Oh, sorry. I'm going to update because I think I installed this a couple months ago, and so there's probably some updates that need to take place, just so I don't run into problems. Okay, so that's done. So now I'm going to do apt-get install git. This will let me download all the repositories off of GitHub. Git is also, I'll show at the end of the video how I use Git to create a site template for ConnextCMS and use that so I can still develop in whatever operating system I want, which I develop in Windows. And so it lets me develop in Windows, check my code in through GitHub, and then pull it back out inside of this Ubuntu virtual machine. Okay, so Git's installed. Now I think I can finally clone the repository. So because I'm doing this live, there's going to be little mistakes like this, and I think that's ultimately a good thing because you're probably going to run into the very same things. So it's good to see how someone else does it. Okay, so now we need to pull MongoDB. This is going to take a while, so I'll fast forward. Oh, wait a minute. Pull the MongoDB image. Oh, okay, let's back up a step. Let's start at step one. This tutorial here is based on it's a DigitalOcean tutorial, and it's specific to DigitalOcean, but because their droplets run Ubuntu 16.4 and we're running Ubuntu 16.4, it all works. And I know this because I've tried it already. Okay, here we go. So we can follow this tutorial to install Docker, because that's the first step, is getting Docker installed on your machine. Now I'm using Windows 10 Home Edition, and I cannot run Docker on here, which is why I'm using VirtualBox, because Docker runs fine on Ubuntu, but it does not run on Windows Home Edition. So I'm just going through here and copying all the command lines. Yeah, it looks pretty close. Install Docker image. Okay, so Docker is installed. Let's check the status. Looks good. Says it's running. So that makes it so I don't have to do sudo every time I do the Docker command, but I also need to reboot in order to see that change take effect. So let's just check in with the PowerPoint, see where we're at. Done this. Open the web browser. We're doing this right now, and we're going to test Docker. Okay, so I'll just do a simple Docker command to make sure I can. Alright, that shows all the processes, and there's no processes. And what is it? Docker run hello world. This is just sort of make sure that everything's running properly. So it's unable to find the image. It's going to pull the image. And it ran the hello world image. I can do docker psa, and it's there, and I can do docker rm hardcore herman, and it removed it. Okay, if you are brand new to Docker, I would highly recommend going to Code School, and they have a let's see, where is that? Is it under electives? Docker. Try Docker. It's a free course. It's really not very helpful, this course. But you can go to, was it screencasts? I believe it's one of these screencasts. But they have a screencast. Let's just search for Docker. And well, anyways, there is a like a blog, like a free screen. I believe it's a screencast. And oh, there it is. It's right here. It's right in front of me. This one right here. Build Node apps with Postgres and Docker. This is incredibly
Hi everyone, I'm Carlos
to watch, and so I'll leave it at that. But we'll get back to Docker, and that's how I learned a lot about Docker and how to do a lot of these Docker commands. So I highly recommend that. Docker is installed properly. Let's go back to our README. Actually, that was inside the virtual machine. There we go. Okay, so Docker's been installed. The repository has been cloned. Let's go back to that temp directory. There's the Docker repository that we just cloned off of GitHub. And now I need to install the MongoDB Docker image. And this is going to take a minute. Okay, so the MongoDB Docker image has been downloaded. And now we're going to build the Docker image file, which is kind of just barely showing up on the screen there. So here's where we left off. The download's complete. Here's where we left off in the README. So I'm going to go ahead and run the Mongo image. And here's the command I'm going to run. And it's going to run the Mongo image. It's going to call it Mongo. MongoDB, by default runs on port 27017, and we're going to forward that to port 3500 on our virtual machine. So Docker is running, let's see. So I have my actual computer that's running Windows, and on that operating system, the VirtualBox is running, which is running a copy of Ubuntu. And then Docker is another sort of computer running inside of that computer, and so inside of that third level computer in the Docker engine, it's running on port 27017. I'm going to forward that to port 3500 on the Linux computer. So let's do that right now. I'm going to copy this command, and actually before I do that, I need to create a database directory where my database is going to live. So you can see I've already got the theme directory, and that's where my customized website's going to live. I'm going to make another directory called DB, and that's where the database is going to live. And so I need to use an absolute path. So that tilde, or no, I'm not sure if that's tilde. I don't know what that symbol's called, but that stands for the home directory, temp db. Oh, I'm inside. Okay, so I guess that's going to be /docker ConnextCMS /db. Okay, and it's running. And now if I do docker ps for processes, it shows that Mongo is up and running. And now I am in the repository. I'm going to build the Docker image for ConnextCMS. I'm going to build it in the current directory. That's what the period's for. So this is also going to take a while. It's going to run through each step of each line in the Docker file, and it's going to take a while because it's going to do a lot of downloads, a lot of compiling. And so I'm going to stop the video here and pick back up when it's done. If it errors out, it'll tell you exactly what line it errored out on, and you can try and fix the problem and then run it again, and it'll pick back up where it left off. That's one of the nice things about running Docker image files. Okay, so the Docker file finished compiling, and now we can run it. And here is the sort of crazy Docker file command. So let's talk about what this is doing. So this is running the ConnextCMS image that we just built, and we're calling it ConnextCMS. We're going to give it, we're going to set a volume, that's the dash V, and again we have to do an absolute path, and we're going to point it at this theme directory here. Theme. And we're going to link to the Mongo Docker image that's already running, and we're going to forward the port to port 3000, and we're also going to do an interactive, that's the IT bash shell. So when I run it, it drops me into the Docker container as user ConnextCMS, and my password is password. So this is all set up inside the Docker image, so this can be changed by editing that Docker file. So everything's been set up and configured because of the Docker file that ran, and all that's left is just to change directory into the myCMS directory and run Keystone. So it's running that initial startup script to create the user because this is the first time it's run. It's telling me it's available on port 3000. So inside my virtual machine, I can go to localhost port 3000, and there's my new ConnextCMS installation. Now if I go back to my Windows machine and I do localhost port 3000, nothing shows up. And that's because by default, VirtualBox does not forward ports to the host machine. So the host machine in this case is Windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to VirtualBox, and I'm going to go to Settings, Network, and I only have one adapter set up, so that's easy. Go to Advanced, and I'm going to go to Port Forwarding. Oops. And I'm going to add a rule to forward port 3000 from the guest to the host. So now, it already refreshed, but now I'm on my Windows machine, and I can access the web page being served by the ConnextCMS running inside VirtualBox, which is also running inside Docker. So that's pretty sweet. Now I can access it. It's only on my local network, but what this becomes really handy for is now that you have a Docker engine or a Docker file running your website, you can clone the site template to create your own customized site, which I'll show you in a minute. And you can customize this Docker file, and you can do all your development on your own machine. And because it's a Docker file, you should just be able to run it on any server out there in the cloud that can run Docker, and it should run exactly the same. So let's see where we're at with this PowerPoint here. So we ran Keystone. So now what I want to show you is how to duplicate the site template. So if you go to ConnextCMS, and ConnextCMS.com, and let's see, go to the example sites. You can find a link to the plugin template, and you can find a link to the site template. So here's the site template, and this is a great way to customize your own site running on ConnextCMS. So this is what we're going to do, and in fact, we're going to go back to the virtual machine, and I'm going to go to that repository here, site template. So I'm going to clone this. So I'm inside the Docker container, so I'm going to exit the Docker container. I'm going to go into the theme directory. And this is just a blank directory. I added the readme txt file here. Let's just see what it says. Just to make that directory exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone the site template repository, and that gives me sort of a template to follow. So what I'm going to do is remove the Git directory, and I'm going to rename this. Let's call it test site. All right. Now I'm going to create a new repository on GitHub. I'm going to call it test site. This is a test site running on ConnextCMS. I'm going to make it public. I don't need to initialize a README. Okay, so now I can go git init. I can add all the files. call this first commit. Oh, got a config. Now I can commit, and I'm going to follow, just to avoid typos, I'll copy and paste. So I've created a repository. At the moment I'm checking in files. Now if I go back to this GitHub page and refresh, all the files from the site template are there, including the README, which doesn't apply anymore. But now on my Windows machine, I can open up my handy dandy Git shell. And I can clone that repository. And I'm going to use Git basically as a substitute for old school FTP. Oh, wait. Oh, right. I need to go. I'm on my Windows machine. It gets confusing when you switch back and forth between the operating systems. Test site. I want to clone this one. Okay, so now I have my repository here. That's weird. Template library.zip. Oh, I didn't go into the right directory. Test site. There we go. Now I'm in the right directory. Okay, so I'm on my Windows box, and I can open that repository, and I can start changing things. So the site template comes with a really simple merge script that basically just moves the keystone models, routes, and templates into the folder. Nothing too crazy. Here's the index HBS file that controls the home page. So let's just see. Here's what it looks like. So let's change this to say hello world. So these change. Let's just see what it looks like with the vanilla site template. So I'm going to go back here. Now that this is here. So because these files in the virtual machine are in the theme directory, and that's set up as our volume, that means those files will persist. So what I'm going to do is go back. I'm going to open this in a new tab. And I'm going to go back to the Docker file repository. And rerun this command. So I'm going to open this back up, and I have to put the path in here. So now I'm back inside the Docker engine, and this is all new. The only data that persists is the database and the theme directory. Everything else gets, it's like you're starting it for the first time. So there's my test site. Here's the merge script. I'm just going to check something real quick. So this is going to go to the home directory. See, this is going to copy everything, home directory, my CMS. So that's where it's expecting the files to be. and that's going to work just fine. So let's run this merge script. Okay, everything ran just fine. And now we're going to run Keystone. There it is. Let's see what it looks like now. Okay, there we go. So now the site template files are copied over. That's why this is changed. And so now we can change those site templates. So now we're going to change this to say hello world. So I'm going to switch back to my brackets editor. This is my text editor of choice running on my Windows machine. And so I'm going to change this index.hbs file. You notice this is just HTML, so the extension's HBS, which is for handlebars, but you can just treat it like an HTML file. So now on my Windows machine, I've edited my repository, and I'm going to check in my changes. That's really weird. So I'm going to add the files, add a commit message. I'm going to push it up to the GitHub repository. Now I can switch back to my virtual machine. Go back to the theme directory, go back into the test site repository, pull the changes down from the GitHub repository, run the merge script again, and I don't need to restart Keystone.js because I only changed the HBS files, so nothing on the server side actually, nothing running in Node changed, so I didn't need to restart Node. So here you can see the change popped right up, hello world, and I can also switch back to my Windows box, reload the page, shows up there. So that's the beginning steps of how you would start creating your own customized website. As I've covered in previous videos, the index is the home page. The default HBS, that controls the nav menu, the header, and the footer, which doesn't really exist here. And so that's where you start creating your own website, and then the routes is for your APIs and for your different keystone views and your different keystone models. That's all in the site template. The site templates don't actually use ConnextCMS in that they don't create like new menu items inside the ConnextCMS dashboard, so you don't need to worry about that. But I'm digressing. Let's get back to the focus, which is setting up the Docker file and setting up the dev environment on Windows. Hopefully I've shown you how to do that, and you can figure out how to do it on your own machine, starting from a vanilla installation of Ubuntu 16.4. Again, all the steps I've done here would work just fine on a DigitalOcean droplet. You can follow all the same commands. Now you can also run it on VirtualBox and Windows, get your own copy of ConnextCMS running, as well as Keystone.js. Start creating your own customized sites, push them out to a different server using GitHub repositories in place of FTP, and because you're using the Docker image and Docker files running in the Docker engine, you're OS agnostic, so maybe your server is on a DigitalOcean droplet or on the Amazon web server or whatever. It doesn't matter as long as the operating system on the server can run Docker. You should be able to develop your own websites here. And so yeah, enjoy.